Shabbat Shalom. It's great to be with all of you once again as we gather for Shabbat. And so we begin by taking of all the beauty that's around us, even when the sky is cloudy and gray, even when the rain is falling. It's still miracle that we're able to be together. It's still a miracle all around us all the time. And so we begin with a song of welcome and of praise this Shabbat together.
And in that spirit of seeing the beauty in a rainy day, we'll sing Ma Yafeh Hayom. We've made it again to Shabbat. Ma Yafeh Hayom, Shabbat Shalom. Ma Yafeh Hayom, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat, Shalom. Ma'yafeh hayom. Shabbat, Shalom. Ma'yafeh hayom. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You may notice I'm not in my office or at my home. I take those words of Torah literally. When you walk by the way, when you are in your home, and when you are out about in the world, that's all time for Torah. And I am out and about, and our home is a little chaotic right now, but I am finding some solace here. And Shabbat is everywhere. Doesn't matter where you are, anytime. The time matters, but the place doesn't. It's Shabbat, whether we are traveling, whether we are at home, whether we are at synagogue, it's Shabbat, and it's a state of mind, it's a state of being. And every Shabbat, every service, we say these words, the words of the Shema, that connect us to every moment, every space, every living creature is all part of one creation and one God. Together we sing the words of the Shema.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod Malechuto Leolam Voed.
It's appropriate to have a rainy day today as we start this Shabbat where we read the story of Noah and the flood. So we hope it's not the beginning of 40 days and 40 nights, but just a little rain to remind us. Importantly, after the rain in the story of Noah comes the rainbow, comes that sign of God's presence, the miraculous presence of God in our lives. When we turn to our next prayer, which also comes from the Torah, but from the book of Exodus, the Michamocha, we recognize that God's miracles surround time, just like the rainbow comes after the storm. We sing Michamocha.
Michamocha ba'elim Adonai, Mi kamocha nedar ba'kodesh, Mi kamocha ba'elim Adonai, Mi kamocha nedar ba'kodesh. Nora tehilot, osef ele, Nora tehilot, osef ele, Adonai imloch leolam voed. Ay la 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 la. Ay la 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 la. Ay la 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 la. Hi la 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 la. Adonai yimloch leolam voed. Adonai yimloch leolam voed. Adonai yimloch leolam voed.
We take a few moments now for some silent prayer, reflection, meditation, time to count our blessings and express the gratitude we feel for the beauty of creation and the ability to celebrate Shabbat.
This Shabbat, as we pray for peace with the words of Oseh Shalom, I'm thinking about how important dialogue is in our community, in our families, in our society. The ability to set aside differences, listen to one another with compassion and respect, and hopefully through that patience and understanding to find a way towards shalom, to build a world of peace together. And so we'll pray together with these words, Oseh Shalom. Oseh Shalom b'rama uya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen. Oseh Shalom b'rama uya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen. Oseh shalom b'rama uya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen. Oseh shalom b'rama uya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen.
At the end of that Noah story, God promises Noah not the world again. And yet we're doing a pretty good job of it ourselves. And so we say a prayer for our planet in the hopes we can learn and grow and change and make the world a more habitable and hospitable place. We're thinking of all those places that are suffering in truly dramatic storms and fires in our nation. So we say these words of prayer for our planet. Dear God, help us celebrate your awesome creation and all the life on the wondrous planet Earth. Help us feel connected to all life on this small blue planet. Life is living us. Creator of the universe, help us understand that to master our world means to take responsibility, not only for us, but for all the creatures on Earth. Help us use the power you gave us to build a better living world and not casually destroy what we have borrowed from our children. We are the stewards. your partners in creation. We call on you for help and guidance. Our God, God of our ancestors and of our children, in this time of climate crisis, help to preserve life, protect it, and defend it. We owe it, those born and those yet to be. If not for us, then for them, dear God. Guide us on our journey.
With those beautiful words, we recognize that it's not only our planet that's in need of healing, it's many, many of those, our friends, family. And we ask God for their refuah shlema, for their full and complete healing, healing of body, mind, and spirit, as together we sing the Misha Berach.
Misha Berach Avotenu Mekor Habracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength who bless the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misheberach imotenu mekor Abracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shelema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
Well, as Rabbi Ike mentioned, this week is Torah portion. Our Torah portion is Noah, is the story of Noah, and we all know that story. But there's an interesting verse that that is quite provocative and the subject of a lot of debate. And the verse says, Noah was an Ish Tzaddik Bedorotav, which means a righteous man for his generation. Now, the surface reading of that, if you look at it, you say, that's a really nice compliment. Noah was a righteous man in his generation. Good. A Tzaddik, Ish Tzaddik. Now, the word Tzaddik is very strong. Yet, the Jewish commentators put a little wrinkle in that interpretation. They say that rather than serve as a compliment, that description of Noah as an Ish Tzaddik Bedorotav, a righteous man in his generation, is actually somewhat of a put down. That Noah lived in a world of great wickedness, right? That's why God had to send the flood. The world was chaotic and full of murder and death and destruction. And so in that world, Noah, who's just an average human being, he was a righteous person because in comparison to everything around him, he was righteous, but in general, he wasn't. Then they say, in comparison to somebody like Abraham or somebody like Moses, Noah was not very righteous. He was righteous in his generation because his generation was so wicked. But in the grand scheme of things, he wasn't so righteous. Now, while this interpretation may appeal to, I think, our sense of self-righteousness, I don't think it's such a good interpretation. And I think what the Torah is describing there is actually quite good. And for Noah to be a righteous man in his generation, the way I read it, and of course I'm applying a 20 and 21st century psychology to this, but I read this as an example of what the psychologist D.W. Winnicott called good enough. Now, if you may know this, But there is this idea in parenting. It's Winnicott wrote it applying to the mother, but I think it can apply to either parent, of good enough parenting. That if you have a screaming baby, they want to be fed instantly and they want you to be there instantly. And you can never satisfy that perfectly. Simply, to be a good parent is to be good enough, to be there, to respond. You don't have to be perfect. There's no such thing as perfection, but good enough that you are caring and loving and soothing when it matters. And it's not just in parenting that this concept applies. It's in everything, right? And I talked about this on Rosh Hashanah, if anyone remembers. Hopefully some do, about this idea that perfection is a myth. We can't. It's an ideal that is never attained. You can't be a perfect spouse, a perfect child, a perfect friend, a perfect rabbi, a perfect cantor. That doesn't exist. We are all simply trying to be good enough, to be a good enough parent, to be a good enough. Now, it sounds kind of negative because sometimes we speak in superlatives. We tend to, that's just in some ways human nature. We tend to talk about superlatives and being the best and the biggest and the greatest. But think about it. If you have a plumber come over to your house, the goal is they can be good enough, right? They can serve that function. Sometimes people are outstanding, and those are wonderful moments that we cherish. But to expect us to be perfect and the greatest and absolutely amazing all the time is an unrealistic expectation, and it's not the way human life functions. And I think what the Torah was getting at in saying Noah was righteous for his generation was to say that is all of our tasks, to be righteous in our generation, to do the best we can with the life that we've been given. If we lived in a different age and a different time, maybe we would act differently. But in the time that we've been given, to act good enough, righteous enough, to be a good person, a mensch, as that word is often used, that's an extraordinary goal. And I think it applies to all of us, even right now, especially during this pandemic. We want to be, some people, we take precautions very seriously. All of us do. Yet there's always more we can do. We could always be washing our hands another time. We could always be, covering our faces every instant. But we're not perfect. We have to take precautions seriously. We have to be good enough. We have to function. We have to keep ourselves safe. But to try to expect ourselves to be in control of every single moment is a human impossibility. It's not something that's attainable. To be a pure tzaddik, to use the Hebrew phrase, to be pure righteousness was not something that Noah could achieve, not something that Abraham could achieve, not something Moses could achieve. But all of us, each of us, can be each tzaddik v'dorotav, a righteous person in our generation. We can do the best we can to protect ourselves and our loved ones. We can do the best we can to serve ourselves and our loved ones. We can be the best spouse we can, to be the best friend we can, to be the best, whatever profession, rabbi, lawyer, doctor, grandparent, parent. We can all strive to be a tzaddik v'dorotav, righteous in our generation. And so it wasn't a put down. It was really a call. It was a call for each of us to do the best we can with what we've been given, to make the most of our circumstances. And I hope all of us can do that in the week ahead. Shabbat Shalom.
Yesher koach. It's lovely, and makes me think of Rabbi Hillel from the sayings of the ancestors, right? In a place where there are no human beings, strive to be human, right? Strive to be humane. But we do the best we can with the circumstance that we're given, including the circumstances that surround us today. And so part of being human is to recognize loss, the loss of loved ones in our immediate area, our families, our communities, but also across the world. We're thinking of all those who've died in recent days and weeks in this pandemic, and we're praying for their families. We say the words of the Kaddish Yatom, the mourner's Kaddish. We take them into our hearts with our own, as we say these words. Yal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, ba'alma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala uv'zman kariv imru amen. Yehi shmei rabba mevorach le'alamo ome Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitale v'yitaral shmei d'brichu Leilo min kol birchata v'shirata tushbahata v'nehemata da'amiran bi'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlomo rabba min shamaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Osei shalom b'mromav Ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen.
Do we have a cantor? Do we have a closing song?
Sure do. For today, I thought it'd be nice to sing an old favorite, Adon Olam. Adon Olam Asher Malach B'terem Kol Yetzir Nivra Leid Nasa Mechefso Kol Azai Melech Shemo Nikra V'acharei Kichlot HaKol Levado Yimloch Nora Vehu Hayam Vehu Omer Vehu Yeh B'tifara Vehu Echad Ve'ein Sheni Lehamshir Lo Leachbira Ve'li Reishim Ve'li Tachlit Velo haoz ve'hamizra ve'hu eli v'chai go'ali v'tzor chevli v'tzara ve'hu nisi umanos li menat kosi ve'yom ekra ve'yado afkir rochi ve'tishon ve'ayira ve'im rochi gediati Adonai li ve'lo ira. Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Shalom, everyone.
All right.